Today we're meeting with Matt Dickey in Zionsville, Indiana, and Matt Dickey is the Superintendent of the Parks and Recreation Department in Zionsville. Tell us what's happening with what the trails are and what's new.
Okay. In Zionsville, I've been here for 4.5 years as the superintendent, and came to that position from full-time consulting in parks and recreation, trail planning, grants, and those sorts of things. And came to, for the first time in my professional career, came to a system that had pretty well established trails. We had our own rail trail here in Zionsville, 3.5 miles with no crossings, no at-grade crossings in terms of those pieces, which, as you know from rail trail stuff, is pretty fortunate. And in addition to that, there are other trails throughout the community. Some are side paths along the roadways and extra wide sidewalks, pieces like that. Others are separate standalone paths either through parks or even through, behind this facility here, there's a trail that instead of going along a street for most of its length and taking extra trees out for part of its length, it dips quite a bit to the north and comes up through some trees and comes up behind this facility and then back down to the roadway. So unlike a couple of the other career places that I've been at, we've had that opportunity here. We are not resting on our laurels, though. We have a very active park board and a very supportive council. And we've built, since I've been here, 2 new parks. Both of them had not been bid, and one of them hadn't even been conceptualized yet. And I came in 2009, and we conceptualized Elm Street Green through a design charrette for the community, where the whole community had a chance to be involved. And then we put that into construction documents, put it out to bid, and all that got done in about 1.5 years. It was pretty hectic.
That's fast.
Yeah,
that's
really
fast.
I felt so at the time, too. And that is a 15-acre site that has internal trails. It's on the Eagle Creek, the stream. There are 2 property owners between us and Lions Park, which is a privately owned park by the Lions Club, which has paved trail along the stream. And then our Creekside Park is immediately south of that and adjacent and connected to via trail along the stream as well. So, and we have on those 2 properties, we have an easement now identified on one. We have one more piece, and we'll make a link on that, and then that'll link it completely into our system. It's linked now up along the streets, but this would be a sort of a streamside link to the system. The other site was the Turkeyfoot Park site, and it has 0.6 of a paved mile of trail, 10 feet wide. At the time, the street department, and like many communities, Carmel and many of our neighbors, if it's in a park or along a park, we have a pathways committee that advises the whole town council, and if they identify a trail and the town council agrees it's a priority and fund it, and if it's in a park or along a park, it falls on our plate. Otherwise, it'll be on a street department plate. So they had a piece along the street, the Turkeyfoot Road, that they were working on, and our park department and park board was working on our piece in the park to make the link. And we have it. It's across the floodplain of Salt Creek, crosses on a prefab continental type Corten steel type bridge, and then crosses over to Zion Aqua area, which is a local public available, but kind of a club, a swimming club, and a swimming pool area. So those 2 both got built starting in 2010 and completed in 2011. And now we are also working on our newest park is being built, and hopefully you'll have a chance to see it today. But it is a 10-acre site, actually 13 total acres bought in cooperation with the fire department. And that 10-acre site is a northwestern trailhead for our rail trail. It's going to extend the trail about another 1/4 mile, and then we have some internal trail loops in our 10 acres. It'll make about a 1/2 more mile of pavement. It'll be 12 feet wide on the rail corridor, which is the first time our rail corridors had a chance to go 12 feet wide. We have 8 and 10 feet, depending on when it was built, as people learned, and like many communities. As we learn from our successes, we learn that 8 feet and 10 feet really even sometimes is not wide enough for multi-use path. So we'll be expanding that, and that is on that state visionary trail that's also being worked on by the Friends of Boone County Farmland Heritage Trail, Boone County Commissioners. Whitestown is the next community, and Lebanon the Friends of Boone County has 7 miles under crushed material north of Lebanon, and hope is eventually that'll get to Lafayette. So we're kind of nibbling away at our piece. We have about 1 more piece, 2 more pieces before we'd hit our western property or our town limits. So this is getting us pretty close, and we'll have a parking area and some regular park amenities, but one of the main functions is a trailhead.
So Zionsville has been known as a village, and I'm going to say forever, that it's the quaint, beautiful, walkable destination. So why build all of these other trails and connectivity when, in theory, you have your village?
I think that people of Zionsville, now I'm speaking as someone who's been here 4 years, been observing, and maybe that's accurate, maybe it's a fresh outside look that's accurate assessment, maybe it's off, but I think they purposely realize the value of a walkable, livable community. I mean, that walkable sense is that it ties right into the village thing. At one point for many years, until just before I came here, their town motto was a town within a park. So they were consciously working towards these, and that's why we have some 15, 16 miles of paved trails in addition to the rail trail that go around the streets and things like that. Some are 6 feet wide in the early days, some are 8 feet wide, some are 10 feet wide, but they really value their ability to get around that's not tied to a vehicle situation. And I think because of that, it's a very natural outgrowth for those people who are used to walking and doing that to go, okay, this is great. I like walking to the village, or I like walking to my cousins down this way on the rail trail. Now I want to walk a little farther. I want to make that connection, or I want to get over, to Carmel. We have our piece over along 106th Street to Carmel, and Carmel's in recent years have built back towards us, and you can now ride a bike without being on 106th Street for everything but about 2 or 3 miles right around 31 and Home Place in Carmel. They still need to kind of get that piece in, and they're probably waiting for the NDOT to do whatever they're doing on 31. It doesn't make much sense to build through there and have it be gone. Mm-hmm. So you can ride some 10 or 12 miles from kind of the heart of one community to the heart of another community without being on any sort of roadway if you don't want to. And so I think that outgrowth of walkability and that kind of livability in our community has caused the people to make the natural leap to, I've heard people say they can't wait for the trail to get done and to Whitetown and have Whitetown come back and meet us so they can go to the LA Cafe in Whitetown for dinner. So, there are people planning trips before the trails are even done.
What is the importance of the park experience to the people here?
I almost think we don't have enough time to answer that, but in today's world where unfortunately as I age, me included, we're fighting our weight and we're trying to stay fit and stay active, and there's been studies that show activity increases mental acuity as you age. Another thing I could probably use some help with now and again. So fighting things like obesity, fighting things like as we live longer and trying to stay mentally active and physically active longer, parks are a crucial part of that. For our children, again, in this world of electronic satisfaction and gaming and online interaction, we sometimes, if we don't make an effort, we don't even hardly have to go out to meet people. We can talk online, and the kids the same way. It's been study after study have shown that kids who have access to, say, as simple as a playground as youth tend to have less health problems as they age. There have been some long-term studies following groups of kids for these sorts of things, and the National Park and Rec Association has some of these online, and the various state boards of health have things like these data online. So we're finding those sorts of things out, the ramifications of either not having parks and those types of facilities or not using them in competition with all the other things that can draw our attention off. And even, parks, for example, often fulfill a sports component in today's world, and really even in worlds when I was growing up and things. So that's another way it taps into it, provides places for those sorts of activities. And you hear things, to what degree you buy into it or not, but the green deficit and those sorts of things, the passive side of parks, the woods and tree lots and earthen pathways, because not all of our trails, that 16-mile figure was paved trails, but we have more trails that are earthen and what we call rustic trails, which means to us earthen or a light bit of grading and those sorts of things. And we have a 77-acre park, one of our earliest and largest, that's almost entirely in the floodplain of Eagle Creek. Almost all fallow farmland has grown up and was now 20, 30 years later, and definitely over 20 anyways. And it has like a mile of streamside trail and about 4 miles of earthen trails in it. Not the only paved trails touch upon its borders. So those sorts of potential activities that people can come out and enjoy are what help keep us vibrant, living longer, and living fuller while we are living longer.
You've probably been out a few times on your different trails, and can you describe some of the comments that I think you would get from the users of what they love about the trails, in particular through the park lands rather than side paths on the street?
I think that they tend to use, for example, just to differentiate, the side paths on the street more for connectivity, and maybe on their way to, say, the rail trail, which is wooded on both sides for the most of its length, and at the southern end goes along the 77-acre park I told you about it, and the southern half mile is all wooded, very widely wooded, and then you at the very end you get the 77-acre parcel. Starkey Park is that one. So I think they use the side paths more for connectivity. There might be a runner that's looking to have a certain mileage for their loop, or maybe even a change of pace. And I don't mean to imply that they don't use the rail trail or other trails like that for those pieces, but they use those kinds of the gems or the jewels that they're either heading to, or the 0.6 or the 0.6 of a mile piece that I mentioned, Turkey Foot. They'll use that as kind of a reward almost. And I get to run this piece, and you'll see sometimes deer in there along the floodplain, or things like that.
Matt, in the past, most city government departments, it seems, worked independently of other city departments. And with the changes in the economy and perhaps structure of the city government body, has there been a good side to the different departments perhaps working together now to improve the city?
I know what you're referring to, and I've observed it, especially when I was a consultant working around the state in trails and parks and recreation design. And I had a 12 or 15-year consultant stint full-time on that. But I don't think it really developed that way here in Zionsville. And perhaps it's the structure that they had set up with the Pathways Committee, which is a citizen advisory group to the town council over suggesting pathways, putting the lines on the map that may or may not work, and then the street superintendent and the park superintendent sit as technical advisors. They're not appointed to the committee, but they're technical advisors to the committee. We attend most of the meetings, and when one of us is not able to, we usually talk to the other one and say, this is the points I want to make. And we're right here in the same building. That helps too, so I can go down the hall or he can come down the hall to me. But I think that sort of structure, when the Pathways Committee, the Advisory Pathways Committee, advises that here's the top 3 trails we think town council, and the town council says, okay, the top 3, then we can fund, we agree with you, but we can fund these 2 and say one's the park and one's the street department in the bailiwick. That helps it get done in a relatively seamless way. We also have, and this is again not unlike Carmel, but where the Monon in Carmel would be developed and maintained by the park system, but the trails along Hazeldale Parkway are part of the streets department. And it's similar here. We have our division. Now, we do help out in the wintertime in the street department, which has about 9 maintenance side employees, the guys that are out in the trenches every day. When they're out in snow events, plowing some 53 square miles of the town's area, I don't know how many roadway miles, they'd be able to tell us, but how many roadway miles, then we try and help out on some of the park clearing. And we've almost been a bit of a victim of our own successes in that as we do that and keep up with that, they say, oh, I love the way the red tail's plowed. Can we plow this one and can we plow that one? And we only have 2 full-time maintenance staff for 412 acres. So,
oh my.
Yes. So I have been in a plow, which is something you really don't want to have happen, generally speaking. But when we're crammed, I stay in the parking lots and send my more experienced guys onto the trails, because they're, sometimes you're threading between fire hydrants and telephone boxes, and you don't want me in that situation. I need big, broad expanses to go plow. But I have certainly helped out upon occasion in plows, and we have also a person that's kind of the administrator of the maintenance side, that sometimes he's out in the field with the guys and he can plow and things like that. Sometimes he's there making sure that the supplies are ready and the plows are up and running, so he's kind of in and out of the office depending on the tasks and the time of year and those sorts of things. So I think it's a little more seamless here from the point of view of the general public, and there isn't that conflict. I mean, yes, everyone has, in this day and age, budgetary issues, but it's really rather more the budgetary issues the town faces than parks faces versus streets or those sorts of things. And we've even come together, at different times and budgetary times where we'll one department will take somewhat of a hit to try and help something out with another department. I even hear, when I first came here, stories of it like that, about how guys would sit around the table and make the budget come together by giving here and giving there. And maybe that's just the sort of corporate subculture, if you will, of Zionsville, but it is pretty special. And it doesn't hurt the fact that Lance, my counterpart, the street superintendent, and yes, his name is Lance, he is as much a trail user as I am. And in fact, it's probably of at least the town administrative staff, he runs and bicycles a lot, and my knees unfortunately no longer will stand up to marathons and stuff, but I bicycle a lot, and I'll put in roughly 5,000 miles a year on bicycles. And so, I'm on trails a lot, and I was just in here last weekend on some of the trails, and it's also kind of a neat way to see the parks from a different eye too. And people will behave differently when I'm on a bicycle and they don't know who I am versus when I'm pulling around in a park truck. So I can observe things and stay on top of things a little bit.